What's up, guys? These are my UFC 300 predictions. I know UFC 300, a lot of people were disappointed a little bit because they expected a huge name like a Brock Lesnar or a Conor McGregor. We didn't get that, but what we did get is a very solid card, top to bottom. And I noticed lately the cards have been very, very good. 298, 299. Some people even thought 299 was better than 300. So although we didn't get the huge superstar name, we do have a very solid card, prelims and main card. So I'll give you some of my thoughts and predictions on that. So we'll get right into it. We'll start with the early prelims. The first fight of the early prelims is Cody Garbrandt versus Davison Figueiredo. Figueiredo recently moved up to bantamweight after his last loss to Moreno. He had 4 fights against Moreno for the flyweight championship and only winning one of those, the 3 others being 2 losses and a draw. Outside of that, he only had 1 loss against Jussier for Miga in 2019, which was a decision loss. If you look back at that fight, Formiga had a lot of success with takedowns, especially in the first round. At one point, Figueiredo was fully mounted and had him in a bit of trouble there. So Garbrandt does have wrestling, although we don't see it very often. When he does decide to incorporate takedowns, he's very good at level changing. So that would be a very smart game plan for him to use in this fight. Although I don't think that will be the case. I think this is just going to be mostly a stand-up battle. I'm going to have to go with Figueiredo. Cody has seemed to decline. Even though he is on a bit of a win streak, he looked impressive in his last fight, a nice knockout win. But even his wins lately haven't looked as good as his wins when he was on the run to the title. His chin may be a little suspect. I know even one of his recent wins, he still gets tagged, and there's still some questions there regarding his chin. So I'm going to have to go with Figueiredo. I'm going to go with Figueiredo by TKO in the second round. Next up is Bobby Green versus Jim Miller. Miller has looked good. He's on a good run lately, winning 5 out of his last 6. Green coming off a very devastating KO loss. This one's close for me. A lot of people are leaning towards Green. I'm not so sure. Both of these guys have been around for a very long time. I think I'm actually leaning towards Miller. It just seems like he's had a good resurgence with his latest wins. That KO Green suffered is one of the worst I've ever seen. The stoppage was horrendous. I think that referee should maybe be fired. The stoppage was so late. His face was on the face down on the mat, just taking way too many punches. Green is a little younger, but they're both veterans. I wouldn't be shocked if Green won. I just think that last loss was so bad. I think he might suffer some lasting effects from that late stoppage, unfortunately. I'm going to go with Miller, and I'm going to go with knockout in the first round. Next up, we have Jessica Andrade versus Marina Rodriguez. Rodriguez has had some good wins against Mackenzie Dern and coming off a performance of the night versus Michelle Waterson. I'm going to go with Andrade. She's coming off also a good win over Dern. I think Andrade has the power to get it done, has fought some higher level competition throughout her career. I think it'll be Andrade by decision. Next up, we have Jalen Turner versus Renato Moicano. Jalen Turner is the one who had the win over Green, the vicious KO. Prior to that, 2 losses, but very close split decisions to Dan Hooker and Matthews Gamrot. And before that, he won 5 in a row. His last loss before that was 2019 to Matt Favola. Moicano coming off 2 wins, most recently a decision versus Drew Dober, and a rear naked choke win over Brad Riddle. Close fight for me to call. I'm going to go with Turner. A lot of Moicano wins are by choke or rear naked choke. Turner's never lost by submission. I'm going to go with Turner by TKO in the second round. Next up is Sodiq Yusuff versus Diego Lopez. Yusuff coming off a decision loss to Edson Barboza. Prior to that, he looked pretty good, winning his 2 prior, a submission and a decision. Then a loss to Arnold Allen by decision. Lopez on a 2-fight win streak, winning 4 of his last 5. 2 close decision losses, and before that he was on a 7-fight win streak. His only other loss was a knockout back in 2018. I think Diego Lopez has looked more impressive. It seems like when Yusuff fights the guys near the top of the division, he loses. I'm picking Diego Lopez to win a decision. Next up, we have Kayla Harrison versus Holly Holm. A lot of hype on Kayla Harrison. She's bigger, younger, only has 1 loss. Granted, she hasn't fought in the UFC, so the caliber of the competition may not be the same. This is the first time Kayla Harrison's fighting in the UFC, first time fighting at 135 pounds. So it'll be interesting to see if she can make weight, first off, and if she does make weight, how compromised she is by that. I think Holly Holm definitely has better striking. She has that, very famous win over Ronda Rousey. Kayla Harrison, very impressive judo credentials. Somewhat similar style to Ronda Rousey, although I feel like Kayla Harrison could be better. And like I said, she's bigger, younger. If Holly can keep distance, keep it a striking match, then I like Holm, but I think Kayla Harrison will get a hold of her, dominate with her grappling. I think it's going to be Kayla Harrison walking away with a win, I think by decision. Next up, Calvin Kattar versus Aljamain Sterling. Sterling, the former champion, and coming off a loss to Sean O'Malley at bantamweight. So he's moving up in this fight to featherweight. Kattar has lost 3 of his last 4 fights, but lost to some pretty good competition. I think Sterling will win this. Sterling coming off a loss, but he was caught early in the second round. Before that, he won the first round versus O'Malley. Most people think he won the first round with O'Malley. First time at featherweight for Sterling, but he was always a very big bantamweight, so I don't think size will be too much of an issue for him. Cut will be easier for him, so I don't think that should be too much of a factor. I think Sterling will use his grappling. We'll just get him down, use his grappling, and I think he wins by decision. Sterling by decision is my prediction. So next up, Yuri Prohaska versus Alexander Rakic. I like Prohaska in this fight. Prohaska coming off that loss to Pereira by KO. Pereira can knock out anyone. He was doing well in that fight. Some people think winning until he got to that point. He's a former champ. I think his striking gets it done. I like Prohaska in this fight. Before the Pereira loss, Prohaska hadn't lost since 2015. Rakic coming off a loss by TKO to Jan Blachowicz, but only 3 losses in his entire career against some good competition. But he also lost to Volkan Ozdemir, who Prohaska knocked out. I think Prohaska knocks him out in the second round. Next up, Bo Nickel versus Cody Brundage. For me, this is definitely the easiest one to call. Brundage is technically on a 2-fight win streak. However, one is a win by DQ. So his opponent disqualified himself by blows to the back of the head. So it sounds like he was losing that fight. The other win he had was he was caught in a triangle and he slammed the guy and knocked him out. So I don't want to call it a fluky win, but it doesn't sound like this is the guy to beat Bo Nickel. Bo Nickel, obviously a ton of hype behind him for good reason. Very, very strong wrestling credentials, 3-time NCAA champion. Won the Dan Hodge Trophy in 2019, which is basically the award that says you're the best college wrestler in the US. It would be nice to see him against some better competition, but it is only his 5th MMA fight. I think this is going to be a first-round finish for Bo Nickel by TKO. Great platform for him to be on such a big card, on the main card. So it'll be interesting to see what he says after the win. If he calls anyone out, or if he just plays the game of, I want whoever the UFC puts in front of me, we'll see. But yeah, definitely an easy win in the first round, I believe, stoppage by TKO. Next up, Armen Tarzukian versus Charles Oliveira. Oliveira's only recent loss was to Makhachev. Since he went to lightweight, he's been on a tear. He's been a killer, former champion, beating some of the best guys out there. That being said, I'm going to go with Tarzukian in this fight. He had some very competitive fight with Makhachev back in 2019. His grappling is amazing. His striking is very good. He did lose one fight since then to Gamrot a couple of years ago. Close decision. But I'm going to go with Tarzukian. They have a common loss in Makhachev, but Tarzukian looked much better, lasting to a decision in a competitive fight. His grappling, almost looked on par with Makhachev, so it was very impressive. Also, Tarzukian never has been submitted, which is often the path to victory for Oliveira. I can't count Oliveira out with his resume, but I'm going to go with Tarzukian by submission in round 2. Next we have, for the BMF championship, Max Holloway versus Justin Gaethje. I'm going to go with Gaethje. I think Gaethje's leg kicks will be a huge factor here. He has very heavy leg kicks. We've seen that work well against Holloway in the past, in the Volkanovski fights. Heavy leg kicks, heavy hands. He's gone 5 rounds many times. Good cardio. Max looks good. He's put on weight. He says the right way this time. He has a large frame. He looks, the same height, I believe, similar size. But I think Gaethje just has more ways to get it done. If he gets to the later rounds, I give Holloway a much better chance. But he still could lose a decision. Holloway does have an iron chin, so I don't think he gets finished. I'm going to pick Gaethje by decision. Next up, we have Zhang Weili versus Yan Zonan. I'm not sure how to say the last name, to be honest, but I think Weili dominates this fight. I think her opponent is a worthy opponent for sure. She just knocked out Andrade. Weili has KO'd Andrade in the past as well. So I'll just call her Yan, her first name Yan. Did lose 2 of her last 4 and lost to a girl, Marina Rodriguez, by decision. I think Wiley wins third round submission. Then we have the main event, Alex Pereira versus Jamal Hill. I actually think a lot of people are underestimating Hill in this fight. He was the former champ who never really lost the belt. You could almost say this is champ versus champ. Very good fight. I think it's going to be a very exciting fight to watch. It should be a striking battle. Both have great striking, great power. I think Pereira's striking is a little better. His power is just too much. Also, Hill's coming off an injury. He ruptured his Achilles, apparently playing basketball not long ago. So there's some questions if he's returning too early. Did he perhaps accept this because UFC offered him, a pretty substantial payday? I know this wasn't their first choice. They were in negotiations to get other people on as the main event. So yeah, hopefully the injury is not a factor. Hopefully he's perfectly healthy. But either way, I'm going to pick Pereira. I think he knocks him out. I'll say in the second round. Second round knockout. Win for Alex Pereira. He'll retain his title. And that's it. So those are the predictions for UFC 300. I think it'll be an interesting card for sure. I think the fights are very interesting matchups, good matchups. Should be exciting fights. Looking forward to watching it. And I'll be posting some updates, reactions to the event. And I'll talk to you guys later.